Everyone has their favorite games, and most likely you remember the first time you came in contact with that game and played it. Well, for me, for NBA Jam, it was the arcade cabinet. Released in 1993 by Midway. Mom took me to local community college, and there it was, NBA Jam. She gave me 1/4 to play. I picked Shaquille O'Neal and Scott Skiles. It looked so realistic. From then on, I was hooked. Naturally, I had to ask for this game for my next birthday, and it was the only thing my parents got me that year. And boy, I did not need anything else, believe me. So what is my console OG? NBA Jam for the Super Nintendo. Let's check it out. Released in 1994 for the Super Nintendo, published by Acclaim, originally ported over from the Midway arcade game by Iguana Entertainment. This relationship gets sketchy in the future, but we'll talk about that another day. Does this opening theme sound familiar? In my opinion, it has to be one of the best opening themes of all time. It was so impactful and sounded so good on the Super Nintendo, it was a no-brainer to open up my episodes with this theme song.
Tonight's matchup. Versus
Before we go straight into the game, I just want to explain a few things. I absolutely love the way Midway did their arcade-style leaderboards for sports games. These leaderboards make it easy to track your success versus players that are playing on the same console or arcade machine. If you are a stats guy like myself, I'm sure you were digging these leaderboards too. Luckily, for those of us who appreciate the arcade-style authenticity, games ported over to consoles in the late 80s and 90s tried to get as close as possible to the arcade game, and NBA Jam is no exception. Entering initials, very iconic in arcade games. And it did you no good on the Super Nintendo version of NBA Jam because you couldn't save the game data on the cartridge. You had to use this password, which for some reason never worked on my cartridge. I don't know if it was faulty, but it just didn't work. Also on this screen, you could input hidden initials that will unlock guys like Al Gore, Bill Clinton, and Warren Moon. Alright, so we're going to go through all the teams just so you can see which players were represented and go through some key omissions from this version. Drazen Petrovic of the New Jersey Nets and Reggie Lewis of the Boston Celtics both passed away before the console versions were released. It's not a common thing for players in the middle of their career to pass away, but they had to be removed from the game. If you bought this game when it first came out, then Charles Barkley is in it, but then he had to be removed because of another game he was contracted to, Barkley Shut Up and Jam. The version we are playing now has Dan Marley as his replacement. Shaq also didn't make the cut as he had his own video game contract going on with Shaq Fu. Other players that were removed due to a player retiring, a player being better, or simply just politics are Kevin McHale of the Celtics, Kendall Gill of the Hornets, Glenn Rice of the Heat, Charles Oakley of the Knicks, Hershey Hawkins of the 76ers, Mike Uzzolino of the Mavericks, Kenny Smith of the Rockets, Spud Webb of the Kings, and Benoit Benjamin of the Seattle Supersonics. Detlef Schrempf also switched teams. He was on the Pacers in the arcade version, and he's on the Seattle Supersonics in this one. Alright, so the teams are chosen. Lumberjack Cracks is going with the home team Chicago Bulls, and I'm going with the Seattle Supersonics. As you already know, NBA Jam is a 2-on-2 basketball game without any fouls. It is possibly the most iconic arcade sports title of all time. So let's take a look at how it ported over to the Super Nintendo. I think the most obvious thing is that it doesn't quite look as good as the arcade version. It does not have the digitized faces that blew you away back in 1993. They were the most authentic looking players to ever be seen in a sports game at the time. In the Super Nintendo version, they use player sprites for the faces as opposed to digitized faces. So if you look at the screen right now, Sean Kemp and Scottie Pippen share the same character sprite and face. There's literally no difference between them besides what jersey color they're wearing. Now the sprites of the other two players on the screen, Detlef Schrempf and Horace Grant, are a lot less common. Horace Grant might share it with one other player, I think James Worthy, and Detlef Schrempf, I don't know if he shares his character sprite at all. The other visual component missing in this game is the player scaling and players being relative to their own height on screen. Without player scaling, the players are the same size no matter where they are on the court. As far as player height, you only have two heights. You have tall and short. Right now on the screen you have 4 players that are all at the tall height. So for instance, Scottie Pippen is 6'7", but he appears to be the same size as Detlef Schrempf, Sean Kemp, and Horace Grant, which are all 6'10". As far as the audio, you don't hear the announcer calling each player out by name like he does in the arcade version. This is obviously due to the fact that there are some limitations to the Super Nintendo's cartridge memory. So anything the announcer says will be relative to anything any player can do on the court. Also, there is no music playing in the background. This is something that is included in some of the other console ports, and it's a nice touch. The full court 3-point buzzer beater, something that happens way too often in this game. I'm positive that if you played this game, you've experienced this crap too. All visual and audio differences aside, this development team nailed the gameplay. NBA Jam is an extremely fun arcade sports game, and everything that was included in the arcade version that made that version great is also in this Super Nintendo version. Player fluidity and speed is very smooth. You still have your high flying slams with camera flashes in the crowd. You could push players up and down the court, fire threes from just about anywhere, and all iconic announcer catchphrases are there. Is it the shoes? From downtown, he's heating up, he's on fire. Yes! So one of the awesome features that is included in the original NBA Jam, but not NBA Jam TE, is breaking the backboard. You'll probably see that later, but I just wanted to let you know. Yes! So before I cut to the halftime stats and second half highlights, I just want to show you the animation of On Fire because it just didn't actually happen in this game. So if you make 3 shots in a row without your opponent scoring, or if you goaltend their shots, you're going to get on fire. While you're on fire, the player that is on fire can actually goaltend the opponent's shots without being penalized for it. The best part about being on fire though is that no matter what player you are that's on fire, you could jack up threes and just make about anything. After making 7 shots while on fire, the fire will go away. As you can see, this version has some video at halftime. It's always Pippen and Grant. It's not because Cracks is using the Bulls. So that's a pretty cool feature of this one. Yeah, buddy. That's the nail in the coffin right there. It's over. Honestly, I thought I lost that game. I had to go with Sean Kemp. I think the first NBA jersey I ever had was Sean Kemp. He could just slam the ball.
Back to good. Fires across court. Kemp's got it right up into the alley. Power shot! Tomahawk jam! Yeah, baby! Into Lister's face. And the Sonics take the lead. 48.
Threw one up, Sean Kemp. 2 threes in a row for Shawnee.
That's another thing. Sean Kemp making the 3 at the buzzer. That's the hidden clutch rating for you right there. It speaks about this game, how good it is, and how the statistics work into it. And a stat that doesn't even show up is going to be a big factor in that game. That's a really important part about sports games, is teams being different. I mean, you have fighting games where everybody is balanced in a way, but they're different. But sports games, your teams are going to be different. You have to know your rosters.
A cool layout screen to select the teams. I mean, that in itself, excellent presentation.
I think the music during the beginning sequence, which sounds fantastic because of the Super Nintendo's sound chip.
The password system would never work for me. What I did one day, I just wanted to see my name up on the Grand Champion leaderboard so badly that I set the time to very fast, and I played through all 27 teams.
Being this the first Midway arcade game you've reviewed so far, there's something to be said about the quality of Midway games and the pacing of the game and how much fun you actually have while you're playing the game. I think NBA Jam's a great example of that. Like the glass breaking. I think that's the only exclusive feature to this one that the TE version does not have. But with that said, I would give it an A.
The fact that you could not save the game data was a game breaker for me. The Sega version saved the game data. This one did not. Probably my first love of basketball games, NBA Jam. This version though, looking back on it, I'd have to give it an A-. Do it big.
Play NBA Jam.
Play it. Since NBA Jam is one of my favorite games of all time, I'm going to recommend one of my favorite beers, and that is Akari Shogun from Half Acre in Chicago, Illinois. This beer is extremely hoppy. It's got this cool samurai art on the can. It's 5.5% alcohol. It's unlike any other wheat beer I've ever had before. Try it out. It's their summer seasonal. This is a good beer. NBA Jam, a true heavyweight contender for the greatest sports video game of all time, yeah. So which one of these versions is the cream of the crop, yeah? Is it on the Super Nintendo, the Sega CD, the Sega Genesis, the Sega 32X, the Sega Saturn, the Sony PlayStation, and even the Atari Jaguar, yeah? Which version is it? Are we taking this journey? Let's do it! Ooh, yeah!